So I wanted to just go back to Vera really quick. Also, I got a bar stool. I'm in bars. I didn't make a slide program. I wanted to suss out and feel what the vibe was going to be and look at everybody individually and see what we may need together. And so Vera, I want to say thank you again for such a beautiful presentation. I think a lot of the things that I want to talk about relationships could even be like placed on your diagram because I resonate so much with it. And if anybody read, if you didn't read it, I'm joking about incorporating an F word today. And if some of you know me, my vernacular actually includes a lot of F words, a lot of different vernacular in general. But we're going to speak about one F word at the later part of my discussion that is going to make us all feel very vulnerable. And since we are in a relationship right now, we are in a relationship, you as a guest, me as a speaker, me with Prestige, I want to open this up by being incredibly vulnerable to you. I did not know how I was going to go about this conversation, this dialogue, but I will end with closing using an F word that very much aligns to what you just spoke about. I didn't have a negative relationship with my body, but I had a very negative relationship with my mother. And I used that as a tool to have a very bad relationship with myself. I used that negative relationship with myself to harm myself for a very long time. And then, after 12 years of harm very similar to yours, I found my F word that helped my relationship with myself and enabled me to grow and to be able to be a woman of power here talking with you today. Spoiler alerts. We are going to be talking about reliability. We are going to be talking about communication. We're going to be talking about trust. These are the three pillars that when I look back at relationships of any sort, of any kind, that I need to constantly fixate. Fixate is kind of a strong word, but go back to, like, is my relationship reliable? What does that mean? Is my relationship communicative? Hi, Alice, baby, I see you. And what does that mean? Do I trust this relationship? Do I trust myself in this relationship? Do I trust whatever I'm in relationship with? And also, spoiler alert, if you can't already tell, I am not wise. I am not in my wise years. I am not my wise learnings. I am the dead fucking center. I'm in the thickness, the all caps thickness of my learnings right now. I'm going through it. Having this opportunity to be reflective of my relationships currently, because of Prestige, has been a fuckload this week. A fuckload since they asked me to do it. My world is insanely wild right now, and I'm literally leaning into all of my relationships as much as I possibly can and learning about them and learning who I am and the mistakes that I make. And honey, I have made some. So, you know, a wise man once said, I cannot teach you. I can only help you to explore on your journey. Well, he also said, be like water. I'm not a wise man, and I'm sure as shit not like water, as we can tell, right? But I am present. My aunt said that 80% of life is showing up, and you showed up, and you showed up, and I showed up, and here we are together to learn about this. You can have a relationship. So what does a relationship even mean? We all know that it's not actually like something you click on Facebook to like elevate your status, right? Back in the day, we used to think that that's what it was, but it's not, obviously. You know, so what is a relationship? You know, it's a correspondence. It's a commitment. It is something that occurs over time. You know, we have good relationships, bad relationships. We have relationships with our parents. We have relationships with our family. We have relationships with our business partners. We have relationships with ourselves. We have relationships, you know, with everybody and everything. One of the things that I think that we forget is to how to be present in those relationships and what they even actually, like, what do we need from them, right? There's a gentleman that just moved to Hong Kong. He's working as the bar manager for one of the bars that my wife and I, my business partner Michael, have together called Artifact. And he has been so stigmatized by his relationships in working in London. They've been so hard on him that he doesn't actually know how to interact in day-to-day operations here. He's been so dumbed down and numbed by the correspondence in his relationships, especially over the time of COVID, that he actually doesn't have the ability to be present in the relationships that he's building here, whether that be a relationship with a producer, with a farmer, with our Iceman. One of the tools and one of the things that we're doing is going in with him and letting him know that this is for what it's worth. It's kind of like Hong Kong is a really beautiful, bespoke place in a lot of ways for being so metropolitan and, such a global city, is that the way that he speaks to people is the way that he's been spoken to. That shame. And he's not shamed, but I'm saying that's the way that he's been spoken to is the way he's learning to speak to other people. Even when it's just asking for a delivery, even when it's just asking for somebody to show up on time. But that's what he learned. Those were his learnings and how to make things, how to be a reliable leader. And in relationships, if we can't be reliable, we all are fixated on the opportunity to be accountable. But at the end of the day, what does accountability really even mean if we're not a reliable person in the first place? And what does reliability look like to you? Reliability is showing up. You guys can rely on me to show up today as I rely on you to be present and listen for whatever that's worth. I rely on my wife. I rely on my wife to make me coffee every morning, to get me out of bed sometimes. I rely on my wife to be present, and I rely on my wife to listen. If we can't rely on one another, if we're not reliable people in any of our relationships, then that's one of the core pillars that we can't go back to, and realizing that the foundation for the relationship isn't strong. Communication. We don't even need me to show you what communication is. We know in our hearts. And it's the bravest thing that we can do is to possibly try to communicate. It's extremely difficult. And sometimes when we communicate, it's like, am I communicating the right way? Is my message getting across there? Because obviously the intention can always be there. The action of the attempt to communicate doesn't always match, as Vera was just talking about. And without communication, without actually just talking to one another, and it can be in any scenario or in any type of way, but without communication, as little as it may be, without using your voice, expressing your intention and how you feel, documenting, letting people know, then how is anybody able to understand what's going on? I was just in Mexico with my best friend Holly, and I'm going through it right now. As I said, I'm in the thickness of my learnings. And I went to Mexico to heal. It was like my bookend of COVID. Before COVID happened, I was in Mexico. COVID happened. Felt like the last 3 years, I was like, cool, we're gonna bookend this, put this back on the shelf, go back to normal life. So I had all these expectations when I was in Mexico to calm down, to find peace. And I wasn't feeling that from my friend. And I was like, why can't you just see that I'm in pain and that I need to heal and that's what this trip is for? And she said, because I am not a mind reader. I was like, oh, touche, and I needed to communicate with her. Sometimes communication looks like just piping up and telling people how you feel. Most oftentimes, one of the ways that we do not communicate is by asking for help. And we must ask for help. And anything from the smallest thing to the largest thing, we need to ask for help in our part of communication. With reliability and communication, you build trust. Trust doesn't happen immediately. Trust is built over time. And it's pretty sure probably one of the hardest things for anybody to do is to learn trust. And in fact, the one thing that we probably all learn to do is to not trust people, not trust each other. And also, are we trustworthy in our actions? Are we trustworthy in our communications? Are the things that we are saying true and valid and intentional? Are they out of fear? When we communicate, are we saying things out of fear? Do we actually trust what we are saying? Do we know that they are valid and at the core of what we mean? And don't get me wrong, not every single thing has to be so intense all of the time. But without reliability and communication, trust can't form in the first place. And what does trust look like to you? Trust is probably, and then ultimately, the worst part about it is that once you form trust, it's such a sacred, sacred bond. It's such a sacred feeling. It's such a sacred knowing that when it's broken, you're devastated. When trust is broken, and I guarantee everybody in this room, their trust has been broken many times. You've probably been the person to break the trust. And you've probably been the recipient of your trust being broken. And where do you go from that? It's devastating. So these are the key pillars that I find are the most important in building relationships. And I had intentions today to come up here and do a quasi comedic stand-up routine / TED Talk and be, very typical Beckaly style. But I'm not in that space right now. I'm in a space of needing to tell my truth. And that's part of my reliability. That's how I'm being reliable and communicating to you, because we are in this relationship together. That is what I give to Prestige. I am present in my relationship and I am communicating. And I promise you that I will not tell you a lie. I will be present and I will be open and I will be right here. Relationships also look like allyship. I think I just made that word up, but if I didn't, woohoo. But so allyship also, it's going back to the way that Vera was speaking, it's not necessarily the goal. It's not the destination, it's the process. One of the things that's really important in my side of hospitality and also just as an individual is I am queer. One of my businesses, the Pontiac, is a beacon for inclusivity, diversity, queer community in every sort. And we get asked to go on tour around the world to embrace or to bring our pride. And oftentimes people are really receptive of that, and then sometimes they're not so much. And recently we've had people that are so incredibly receptive of this that I'm gonna give you a demonstration, not here, but just an example of what allyship looks like. I wish, is Jen here? No. So an example of a solid relationship or a functional relationship or a committed progressive relationship is the Mandarin Oriental Macau. I asked their permission to use their name. I'm not using any logos. This is not a campaign. Well, it's not a campaign, but this is just an example. And it's a very encouraging example of what a communicative allied relationship looks like. They have asked my bar, the Pontiac, to come over to Macau. Because we had been on tour, we were not able to go till around June, so they decided to lean into making it about inclusivity and pride. But they didn't just stop there. We did site visits. We're going to do what's called Rainbow Road in Macau. We're taking the Pontiac over. We're taking as much of the community and allyship within the community over there. But the Mandarin Oriental in Macau, sorry, it might be whatever, Four Seasons. sorry, y'all, love you too. I went over there with my wife to celebrate my 8-year anniversary in Hong Kong, which also happens to be my 3-year anniversary with my wife. And they loved us, they sorted us out. And when I got there, I'm a big dreamer, I think really, really big. So instead of just having the Pontiac and doing what we normally do, like a pop-up, which just to give you some context, we have rainbow flags everywhere, we have bras everywhere, we have boas everywhere, we're campus can get. We are out there, we are rock and roll, we are loud, we are proud. You fuck with the Pontiac, you get the pride, it's how it goes. And I started asking questions like, can we take up more space? Can we put lights up? Can we make this bigger than what we possibly thought it could be? And the Mandarin Oriental has shown up so much every ounce of the way. They said yes to everything they could. They asked their engineers if they could change the lighting. Because I communicated, I asked. I used my words and I asked for what I wanted. Because you never know unless you ask, right? And Jen, my partner in life, as it were, partner in business and partner in life outside of my beautiful wife, she is part of that movement and part of that energy and part of that commitment. And is full on asking for all the same things. And Mandarin Oriental is saying, yes, let's ask our engineers. Yes, let's try to make it work. Yes, let's bring over as many people from Hong Kong. Yes, let's make it loud and proud. Just to the fact that I sat down and just got a message from them saying that the engineers have said yes to everything and the Mandarin Oriental is going to turn rainbow as. But the important thing, outside of that, they went to their corporate and they asked if they could change their Mandarin Oriental fan to rainbow. So this, and it's huge. Like, I just got chills. And that's commitment, and that's communication, and that's reliability, and that's allyship. If you look at the Mandarin Oriental landmark or Macau right now on Instagram or a sponsored ad, their fan is rainbow right now. And that is a relationship. That is a good relationship. That is an allyship. That is communication. That is trust. They trust in us that we are going to deliver everything that we possibly can, and we get to trust in them that they will deliver and show up instead of pretending that it's something other than it is. Now, I wish Vera was still here, but that's okay. I'm bringing you to the F-bomb of this whole relationship conversation from beginning to end. My F-bomb is forgiveness. And forgiveness is also part of relationships. Forgiveness is something that is probably the hardest part after trust is broken, regardless of what type of relationship it is. When I was struggling with what I was struggling because I had a negative relationship with my mother that caused a very aggressive relationship that I personally had with myself, I didn't have to forgive her. I had to forgive myself. Forgiveness is actually about forgiving yourself. We want to project that it's about forgiving the person that did us wrong or the situation that did us wrong or whatever it was that obstructed our path. And don't get me wrong, we also need to forgive those situations as well. But for and give means to forgive yourself. You need to allow yourself the space to stop the pain. And I know that might sound really obtuse right now, but it's very honest. And like I said, I'm going to judge this whole vibe by like how I actually feel today. And that's how I feel. The truth is, those are the pillars of relationships. They are reliability, communication, trust, and forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't have to mean you move on from anything. And forgiveness doesn't have to mean that relationships are over. These are relationships. They are not singular in any way, shape, or form of what you are doing or what the relationship you're in. But of course, it always goes back to the relationship with yourself. Now, on an uplifting note, I would like to dedicate this entire little talk or this platform to one of the best relationships in my life. I have been in a relationship with this person for 8 years. I have been in a relationship with this person since May 8th, 2015, when I moved to Hong Kong. She has been by my side, growing, evolving into a beautiful, strong woman. She has seen me in my flaws and my mistakes, and we have learned how to communicate with one another. We have learned what reliability looks like to one another, and we very much know that we can trust each other. Doyle, I dedicate this opportunity to tell you that you are one of the best relationships in my life, and I'm so proud of you. Yes, honey. Now, to make sure that we do what Angelina said, everybody needs to meet Doyle. I would ask her to stand up, but her skirt's too short. But everybody needs to meet Doyle. She has opened 3 venues with me. She is the absolute light of my life. And she has a foundation where she spends half of her life in Sri Lanka with dog rescue. And I have always said that any part of my life is a platform. Any one of my bars is a platform. And I'm using this platform to help you take care of what you need to take care of. Apologies, it wasn't like this sarcastic mayhem, but thank you so much.